My name is Sabrina Pocamandi. I'm with Highline Mushrooms, and I am a proud board member of the Southeast Produce Council, as well as I have the honor to be the chair of the Southern Roots Committee. Thanks for everybody to come today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Amco Produce, Bard Valley, Calavo Growers, CC's Veggie Co., Dole Fresh Vegetables, Family Tree Farms, Harvest Sensations, Jim Rash, Nasoya Foods, New York Apple Sales, Rice Fruit Company, Frey Farms, Sarah's Homegrown. We give them a round of applause. I would like to call Terry Miller, who is the founder of Southern Roots, to the podium. Where did you go? There. We have a little gift.
Well, welcome all. It's really nice to see all of you. Some of us were reminiscing about when this first started in the fall of, I don't even remember, 2013, 2014. It was in Brasstown, it was hot as hell. And there was maybe 30 of us and maybe as much food back there. We had too much, but it was a great kickoff. And when I walked out and I looked at the line of all of y'all, I'm so glad to see what this has grown into. You may call me founder, but I couldn't have done it without a lot of help from the SEPC board, which is manly, but a lot of great women friends. And there's one particular friend that I'd like to recognize right now, who's been with me from the get-go on this, and her name is Stephanie Hilton. She stepped off as our chairperson last year, and I'd like for her to come up, and we have a gift for her. Now, Stephanie and I first met each other in Washington, D.C., and we both have a great appreciation for fashion. And so it's one of her favorite stores. I'll let her pick out her own gift.
I love you so much. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. It's been a real honor to serve with Terry and the rest of the committee. We've all been together for all these years, and to see what this has grown into is so rewarding. Terry's done a great job. I had a great time, and there's Sabrina and Nicole and Rose and Kim and Kelly Dukes, who's not here today, and I just love you guys. I gotta wrap it up. I'll see you later. Thank you.
So at this time, we like to bless the food, even though we've already broke bread. But if Lucretia could come up.
Good morning, sisters. Let's bow our heads. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to come in as a group of women, to celebrate ourselves and to celebrate the wonderful industry that we're in. We thank you for taking that tiny seed that you planted in Terry's mind, and look out and you see all of us here. We're so thankful. God, please use this meal to bless us and let us go out and go forward and be better people. Amen.
Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome to Southern Roots 2020. I'll give you just a little bit more detail. We are 198 strong in this room today, so fabulous growth. Fabulous. It's really good to see everybody. My name is Julie Van Acker. I'm with Organic Girl, and I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker today. But let me begin with a few questions. How many feel your daily demands leave little time for real connection? Okay. How about how many feel your words fall on distracted or deaf ears? Okay, I see a lot of participating. How many feel work would be easier if you didn't have to work with other people? Okay. So if you've answered yes, you're in the right place. Our speaker today holds a master's in human behavior, presents in-house programs at Microsoft, Pepsi, Boeing, and Procter & Gamble, and has been featured in Success and Working Mother magazines. She earned her certified speaking professional designation held by less than 10% of speakers worldwide, and in 2017 was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. She grew up in Chicago and now lives in sunny San Diego, but she still prefers pizza over tofu. Please join me in welcoming Colette Carlson.
Good afternoon. If I could just have everyone take a nice, slow, deep breath in through your nose and let it out. Don't you just love the smell of estrogen? I love my men, but I'm a ladyist at heart, and there's nothing that brings me more joy than being here today. And because of what I do, I get to interview complete rock stars in a variety of industries. And so it wasn't that long ago that I had the privilege of interviewing Sherry Altercott. She is in the supply chain industry and was featured in her industry rag for Women Who Are Rising, for to keep an eye on. She's achieved greatness, and therefore this article created a beautiful platform for her to share some of her strengths and skills and knowledge. Now, the company also was very proud of Sherry and wanted the PR within the company and the marketing team to promote this because, right, especially in a male-dominated industry, they always want to get the word out about women who are achieving greatness. So they featured this article and put it out in many places. They also encouraged Sherry to put it on her social media, which she did. And so when she did, of course, there's that dear friend who says, oh, I love reading articles like this about strong women, Sherry, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. And she's like, thank you. And then there was Bob, a former coworker who posted directly below, and I asked Sherry, do you want me to block out Bob's name? And she said, no. All right? And Bob said, and I quote, "Get over yourself, Sherry. You're better than self-promotion of your ego, and quit reposting past articles. Use your creative mind that I remember." Now I ask you, do you think Bob would have sent that to another guy? I don't know the real answer to that, but I have a tendency to doubt it. Sherry's a very strong woman, and she said that it set her back a couple of days. Right? It kept playing on her mind. And so you know what? That's part of the reason that I love to continue to show up at events like this, because I am determined, like the most of you in this room, to help all of us close the gap and step into our true power as leaders. I mean, sure, some of us, we still hold ourselves back because we think we're not enough or we're not ready enough, or we wait rather than initiate a critical connection, or we hesitate rather than initiate a critical conversation. And all of those behaviors, mean that we're losing out on better raises, recognition, and career assignments. And yes, some of that is more our mindset than our skill set. But there are just as many individuals in this room who are doing all the right things. And yet, sometimes there's still the gap there, the hiccups, the speed bumps that come because we are women. And so today, I really want to spend our time focusing on using the power that we do have to make a difference, rather than sitting around talking about the situations where sometimes it just doesn't matter and you feel a little bit powerless in the situation. And so having said that, it's my goal to really also acknowledge you because your jobs are tough. True? Who in this room is being asked to do more with less? Yeah, I know, all hands up. Your hands are busy eating, but and please enjoy that food. But yeah, it's a reality. It's a reality in today's world. I mean, change is constant. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Who you even worked with yesterday may not be here tomorrow. And after all of that building of the relationship and trying to create that connection, we're all vying for attention spans in a world where attention spans are disappearing. In fact, how many of you have stopped listening to me already? Right? Keep it real. Okay? And then there's technology. And we love technology when it works and works for us. But how about the way technology has changed the way we communicate and connect with one another? Right? I mean, we're all virtually connected to almost everybody, or at least the people you went to high school with. But good luck sometimes trying to get that FaceTime with the individual you really need to connect with. Companies I'm working with, they're telling me they've never had more channels to communicate, and yet they've never had more challenges communicating some days. Do you ever find that to be true? Yeah. Finish this sentence for me. People still buy from people they, like, trust. Those are the 3 words that come up all the time. People still want to work with and for people they know, like, and trust. I mean, I don't know everybody's title in this room, but I do know we're all in sales and marketing in today's world. And so to build that likability, that trust, that knowingness, that comes from the ability to connect, right? I mean, it's all about the power of connection. And so having said that, the good news, something never going to change, the feel of a human being holding your hand. A warm smile when you walk into a room full of strangers. How about the right words at a critical moment? So deep, long-lasting connection, the relationship building piece, there's not an app for that. Which is why I really believe that moving forward, your success and the success of every company in this room is in direct proportion to your ability to connect. I mean, your people skills are no longer just a nice thing to have. They really have become your greatest competitive advantage. And I don't care anymore if we call them soft skills or emotional intelligence or servant leadership. It really doesn't matter what we label it. But if we can't pay attention to paying attention to the person that's right in front of us and helping to identify their needs, wants, and desires and meeting them, then we're all out of the game. So it's really my goal with our time to look at ways to build some of those deeper, richer connections that ultimately drive your revenue and results. Now, having said that, I thought, all right, well, how can I best connect with all of you? So I thought, well, maybe it would be fun to imagine what it might be like to have a day in your life. All right, so what do you deal with? And again, we all come from different walks of life, but there's, I'm sure, some generalities that we can all align with. And so at the end, you can tell me how I did. So I met Jen out in the food line. Jen, where are you sitting? There you are. Jen, come on up. I said, give her a hand, please. I said, Jen, would you like to come up on stage and play with me? And before she really even knew what she was getting into, she said, yes. I love her. Okay, that's right, the power of yes. Okay, and so if you would just stand right here over the trap door, that would be fabulous. Okay, so for most of us, first thing in the morning now, we wake up to our smartphones. Is that true for most of you? How many of you go to bed with your smartphones? Yep, look around, and time is money. They say research shows 71% of people go to bed with their smartphones. I got to tell you, I think there's much better choices out there. And 46% of people are checking their phones before their feet even hit the floor. Who's doing that? Okay, think about it. You know, first way to start your day, just a little bit of stress. All right, and how many of you are hitting the snooze alarm? Who are you? Think about it. First big decision of your day, procrastination. Okay, so we've got all this going, but right, you've got things to do. So you're already out of bed and you decide, you know, you're going to get a little exercise in right away. Here, untangle that, please. Because before the day gets away from you. All right, so you've already exercised. That's all the time you have. You're in the shower. You're out of the shower. About now, some of us are hearing, Mom, Dad, who has children at home? Wow, a lot of you. How many of you had them come back home? Lucky you, lucky you. Okay, and how many of you have these four-legged children? They need love, nurturing, and trips to the vet, and how many of you got roped into getting one? I promise I'll take care of it. Yeah, who's on poop patrol? You are. I know how this works. Okay, so now you've got places to go. So you've got to get in the car because you've got to be driving to where you're going. And of course, there's always traffic. And then there's that guy who just cuts you off. But you're just going to take a nice breath, Jen, and not get upset and say to yourself, "Aw, he probably has bladder issues." Okay, and now you've got to get your own liquid speed in because, you got to start your day. So you're going through and getting your caramel frappuccino macchiato. Hold the whip because that's going to make a difference. Okay, but some of you prefer Dunkin' Donuts, and depending on where some of you live, you're at Mickey D's or your budget. So there you go. Okay, and so you're getting to the office because you gotta bring home the bacon. All right, and so you walk in. And for most of us, first thing that we do, I have to find it. I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be. First thing we do, we fire up the computer. True? Fire up the computer, see what's going on. But for most of you today, you can't even get in because guess what? It's password changing day. You are locked out. That's right. You get to come up with another letter and a symbol. You're like, I'm giving them a symbol. I can't even remember the last one. And people I meet nowadays, absolutely truth, they are praying for spam. I would love my email to be spam. I could just delete it. I don't have to respond. It is the perfect email. Okay, and so now, right, the day's starting. You got through that email, which means that there is drama because there's always drama in your email somewhere to start your day, so you have to start dealing with that as well. Ooh, you're looking good. I didn't expect that. Okay, so now, of course, you are going to be talking to people all day long, right? And have you ever had to work with that person that just takes forever to get to the point? And then when they get there, there's still no point. But you know, it's all about being a good listener. That's right. Oops, here. Oops. Oh, these ears are all funky. Let me turn these around. There you go. Perfect. Oh, well, there, that works. Okay, good listening skills are the key, right? So you're doing your listening, which is so helpful, and the day is happening, so it's going, which means that you have to hit your targets because there's always projected targets and goals that you have to hit. Here, get that on. All right, and then, of course, there's some webinar that you have to attend to learn more. Oh, there you go. Or you're on a Skype call, and it's like, could you please get that dog to stop barking in the background there? Like, can you hear me now? Y'all talk over each other. Here, listen to the webinar. Get that going. All right, and then, of course, you're dealing with everything within the office. There's meetings after meeting after meeting about when you're going to meet again for the next meeting, right? Take the clipboard. It makes you look really official there. Of course, and then depending on your role, there's all the safety issues that you have to deal with because the last thing we want is any recalls. And so we have to deal with that. And then, of course, there's always the shipping, the one shipment that you really need doesn't show. And then the frozen broccoli starts to, not be frozen anymore. And there's always issues with the truck, what's going on with the truck and the supply chain. And, that's right, deal with it. Okay, and of course, if you're in marketing, then of course the company wants you to come up with another wow, because your last marketing campaign was a wow, but this year the budget is a whoa. So you got to figure out how to do that because, of course, people will be tweeting about it. And so, the pressure's on. And then, of course, there's all the weather issues, right? There's always weather, tornadoes, rain, locusts. I mean, it just never stops what we have to deal with. Oh, my goodness, holy mackerel. And then, of course, you're always having to be careful. If you're in sales, you're always selling, right? The grass is greener. Can't you see, where we are? That's right. Sell, sell, sell. Because it's all about ROI. That's right. It's the ROI. Come on, figure that out. There you go. Okay, and some of you, you're always training new members of the team to do it the right way, not the wrong way. And if you are in a typical office sometimes during the day, then of course you always have to avoid that person that is selling their kids crap. Unless, of course, it's your child. Then you push hard for those cookies, the band candy, whatever it happens to be. That's right. Okay, and of course, about now, you got a call. Guess what? The inspector's stopping by. Be prepared. And you want to be positive and happy with your teams, and so you're very confident. And you're like, come on, guys, we can make this happen. I believe in you, right? So cheer on the teams, but really deep down inside, you're like, get it done. Just get it done. I could have done it myself by now. What's the problem? Whip them into shape. Whip them into shape. And then, of course, there's always somebody, having a birthday, whether on Facebook you got to get on or get back to the office. You're not even crazy about the person, but you like cake. Okay, and then you have a big report to do, or maybe you have to enter stuff into Salesforce, which we all love. Okay, and then that's always when the internet goes down, right? When you need it most. And they're like, well, just put in a ticket. Yeah, I'll give you a ticket. Okay, here, figure that out. You're dealing with that too. You know about now there's another fire you have to put out, And of course, let's just talk a little bit about the travel. Because a lot of you in this room travel, which means that you're standing in some TSA line somewhere about now, which we all know stands for 1,000 standing around. All right. And then there's all the people that love you that think, oh, you get to go to Hawaii for a conference. And they imagine sun and sand and surf. But the reality is ballrooms, bedrooms, and bathrooms. That's about as far as you get. Okay, and again, keeping everybody engaged on your team and making sure that the products are healthy and, the corn's knee-high by 4th of July and all the things that you deal with. And then do you remember the days when you would want to honor your teams or you would just join other people for lunch? And it could be simple. It could be so simple. It could be a Subway sandwich and everybody would be happy. But not anymore. Because, John has gluten issues. Let me tell you, John has more than gluten issues. Right? And then, of course, Dan is lactose intolerant. Belinda's a vegan-holic. We've got somebody on the zone. I mean, good luck trying to pull that one off. Of course, there's always budgeting you have to do and forecasting right there in the file cabinet. There you go. Close it. Okay. All right. I mean, and then, of course, you're not even done. You are not even done with your day, and you are starting to feel just a little bit of stress right now, Jen. But no worries. You picked up a stress ball at the conference. Perhaps if you squeezed in a little vodka martini and a masseuse stepped out, now that might be a stress ball. Okay, and you've got tons more to do for the day, but you're starting to run out of time. So you're just going to bring some homework with you because, you'll get it done in the evening, but you don't get to go home yet because there's a networking event. And it's all about building those connections, and you could use another hand anyway. And then for some of us, if we're even home, we walk in the door and what do we hear? What's for dinner? And does that food just show up? No, somebody has to go get the food, prep the food, make the food, serve the food, clear the food, clean up after the food. It never stops. And, a few of you may like to, pick up a little bit. I don't know if it's your thing or not, and then, of course, throw in some laundry. And about now, you are wiped. Wiped. And you know that you get to wake up and do this all over again tomorrow. But you know what, Jen? Someone's waiting for you to connect. Ba, 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 because we're all so excited at night. Do you recognize this person? Give it up for Jen. Don't you just wish we could just drop it like that? Drop it like it's hot, yeah. Oh, really, seriously, thank you again for saying yes and playing with me. I appreciate you fully. All right, so in all seriousness, I'm glad we're laughing. But how many of you expect that your careers are going to demand less of you moving forward? Oh, there's a laugh. How many of you think your personal lives are going to demand less? All right, so this is the reality. And so all of us in this room are dealing with this, which is why sometimes, even when we know what to do, our behaviors don't always align with our beliefs. We know what we need to do, but we don't do it because we get so sucked into the quagmire. And so I want you to know, though, that, that was a day in your life, that if you really want to be perceived as leadership material, right, that it requires that you be seen that way. Right? So with that said, I want to break it down and look at 3 behaviors that we could implement that will help all of us be a little bit more savvy at what we do. That's the goal. And we're going to talk about cultivating connections, expressing your success, and that risk resilience connection. So let's just get into it. Cultivating connections. All right, we all have heard it isn't just what you know, it's that has never been more true than it is today. That statement will probably never go out of style. And yet, how many times do you feel like you have a really strong network, but when you look at it, it's large, but it's not necessarily strategic? I think women are the best connectors on the planet. We naturally can just build rapport with individuals by asking questions, and we're, for the most part, wonderful listeners. But I want to encourage you to be a little bit more strategic in how you go about that. And so with that said, it really is about gaining access to powerful others, people who can move the needle in your career, and looking at how you're building that out for yourself. So I'm going to encourage you, if you don't already, to have your own mini board of directors. And let's talk about 3 prominent people that need to be present. All right, the first one is a mentor. Second is a sponsor. And I'm sure many of you in this room are familiar with the difference, but I've often been in audiences where there's still a little bit of confusion. So let me simply say that a mentor is a guide. It's someone that helps you recognize and play to your strengths and shows you the way, right? A mentor you talk with. A sponsor, for the most part, is someone who talks about you. It is someone who advocates on your behalf. Not that a mentor can't do that also, but a sponsor is usually at a higher level in a company, and they are someone that needs to be around you to witness your greatness and your ability in order to go to bat for you. So you have to be in the same room as this individual to even get the opportunity, which is why the research shows that more men than women have sponsorships. It's simply proximity power. All right, so with that said, how many of you in this room would say that you currently have someone that you would label a mentor, an advocate, someone who's helping you move your career forward? Wonderful. And maybe many of you had one in the past, but I'm always about how you go about obtaining one makes a difference. Some companies, you get assigned a mentor, and it's not even a mentor that's a great fit for you, but we can still learn and grow from that experience. But I encourage you to go after someone that you've got your eyes on. And it's all in the ask. Because isn't it true that if somebody came up to you and said, "Would you be my mentor?" If you're going to be honest, what's your very first thought? No! Like, I've got so much already on my plate. It's not that I don't think you're a nice person, but man, I have no bandwidth for you. Right? Nobody does. Or there's other approaches. Some people come up and say, may I pick your brain? You know, who wants their brain picked? I mean, it's such an open-ended question that it just doesn't work. So instead, it's that phraseology. It's how we go about the ask. So what if instead you approach someone that you had been watching and respecting for a while and said, "I'm looking to get better at presentation skills. And based on my observation of you over the past few months or year or whatever it is, you excel in that area. And I would love if you would be willing to sit down with me and I could ask you a couple very specific questions around that. I also want you to know that I'm going to hold myself accountable to everything that you say and circle back and let you know how it goes. Would you be willing to have that conversation?" Is someone more likely to say yes? Or at least help you find someone perhaps that would be a better fit for you? So it's the same thing with the pick your brain. If you can say, "I would love to ask you 1 or 2 very specific questions," people are always willing to help with a specific question. It's that woo, big over-the-top ask that seems overwhelming. All right, so that's a way perhaps, if you aren't already doing that, you can make sure that you get the right mentor for you. Sponsorship, it's a little bit more challenging. It's about being in the room. Being in the room so they can witness your greatness and therefore go to bat for you, which is why we need to do everything that we're going to talk about today. And then there's the individual I label an octopus. Who's this? It's that person that seems to have tentacles everywhere. Do you know these people, wherever you go, there they are? And people like them, genuinely. That's an octopus, and they're wonderful to align yourself with simply for that reason. They know lots of people, and they're in lots of environments, and because they're so well-liked, it helps you also leverage that opportunity. So having said that, I really want you to think about this. If I think about all of my connections, are all of my eggs in one basket? In other words, are they all in the same age range, the same gender, the same industry, the same geography? How diverse is your mentorship, your sponsorship, your mini board of directors, your connections? Are there a wide variety of ethnicities and ages and skill sets there? Because that's how we can really learn and grow. I mean, the only time you want all your eggs in one basket is Easter. Otherwise, as things shift and change, you're setting yourself up for a challenge if they are, versus spread out. Now, you're not going to be able to read this at all, but I want you to know I'm going to give you a link, because if any of you are really interested in doing this for yourself, I've created a connections map, and it's a deep dive, worksheet that you need to block an hour for to really think about where you're at, where the gaps are, and where you want to go. And just where I've circled, for example, there's questions like, well, who is the influence to advance my skills, my agenda? Who directly can hire me or introduce me to someone? Who's on the fast track to success? Who has a strong expertise in an area that I'm interested in? Who's worked with the organization a healthy amount of time? Okay, so there's all these questions so that you can kind of take a moment and do a deep dive with yourself if you'd like. So if you want to get your cameras out on your phone, here's the place to go. It's a 6-page worksheet. As my gift to you, there's the link, there's the password. Go and download it. Okay. All right, and it'll come up again at the end if you haven't snapped it already. 1, 2, 3, it's going away, and thank you. Okay, so what is the key to really the power of connections with others? Showing up, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because look around, you are here. You are actually here. But I think sometimes we talk ourselves out of going because of this, because we're so busy. There's so many other things to do. And sure, some of it's going to show up, organically. Here, maybe tonight at a cocktail reception or at another breakout session. You'll meet people, naturally. But sometimes it's the extra bonus things that you're like, oh, I really don't want to do that. How many of you have ever said no to going and playing in a golf tournament with a group? All right, let me look at the hands around the room. So I was speaking to a group of women at a general counsel. They were all general counsel for their company. And one woman in particular was telling me how she always said no to the annual golf tournament. But this particular year, she decided to go. And the reason that she went is because she noticed that there was a bit of a disconnect between her and the CEO, who basically her job was to keep the guy out of trouble. Every time she went to him over something that he was going to do and spoke to him about a different direction or how it might appear if he made that action, she said she felt like she was his nagging mother. But her co-counsel, who was a guy, every time he brought up something very similar, the CEO acted like, oh, wow, man, thanks. So she's like, I've got to create a better relationship with this guy. I've got to start showing up more for some of these events. Ironically, she showed up for the golf event and she got partnered with the CEO. She said they were on their 3rd hole when they started to talk about the co-counsel. And she said, yeah, he's a great guy. I really enjoy working with him. And the CEO said, yeah, he really is a great guy. We play golf monthly together. He really always has my back. So did she. It just didn't appear that way because of the depth of the relationship. So she knew she wasn't going to be a golf player, but she set up monthly coffee morning meetings moving forward with that CEO. She showed up with his favorite drink and hers, and they just kind of spent that, few half hour together, 15 minutes to a half hour, connecting and building that relationship out. And you can't start that relationship if you never do in the first place, right? It's kind of like your 401k, which today may be a 101k. But, the sooner you contribute, the larger it can grow. So if you haven't already started, start today. And then, of course, do your homework. You got to do your homework before you show up. Now, this is something I learned early in my 20s, and it was through my girlfriend, Marva. And yes, she was marvelous. She set me up on my very first and last blind date ever. And all she told me was that his name was Ian, and he was from New Zealand. All right, well, I'm going to be really honest. Back in my early 20s, I kind of had an inkling that New Zealand was by Australia, but I really wasn't certain. And so because I am old, I went to what we call an atlas. That's kind of like Google Maps in a book for you youngsters out there. And I looked up where New Zealand was. And so when I showed up on the date later that evening, I said, Ian, I'm curious, which island are you from? The North or the South? And he said, oh my gosh, do you know how refreshing it is to meet an American woman that, first of all, even knows where New Zealand is, let alone knows there's 2 islands? And I'm thinking, well, I didn't a moment ago. But that's the power of doing your homework, right? And it's true, with the power of the internet, now there's no excuse to not show up with something to say about the individual that you want to connect with. And it also buys you that confidence because you're prepared. And so it's easy to just walk up to someone if you've done your homework and say, before meeting someone that I admire, I do my homework. And I saw the article that was written about you in the Produce News, and I was curious, blah, 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 blah. And now you're off and rolling. And they respect you more, too, because you did your homework. We all like to be valued and validated, and that shows that you aren't just there showing up to be a taker, right? You have a genuine interest. So play to your strengths. You know, some of you are natural organizers, and so being a part of this committee, for example, is a beautiful way to bond and build connection. For others, if you're an introvert, that may not be your style. But I spoke to the women in accounting, and I had a woman come up to me and say she would rather hear somebody scratch their nails on a chalkboard than make small talk. But that didn't stop her from volunteering to be on committees that needed data input or accounting or financial work to play to her strengths. And she said that she got her very last job through a recommendation that she had made through one of those committees. So yeah, play to your strengths as you move forward. I always like to tell this story. If any of you are familiar with Mark Victor Hansen, he is the co-author of all of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And many moons ago, I went from being a national sales trainer to a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years because I popped out 2 of them back to back, and my job meant that I lived on the road full-time traveling. And so during that time, though, I didn't want to lose my network, and I knew at the time that I wanted to do something like this. And so when a speaker would come to town, and I would find out that they were coming to town, I would reach out to their office. Because when you're at this level, what that also means is you're selling a bunch of stuff in the back of the room. And since I had worked with sales legends Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy in my past, I knew how to work that back of room selling table. I knew they hired temporary help, like a Kelly girl back in the day, to do that. So I'd call the office and say, hello, my name's Colette Carlson, and I'm very familiar with selling product in the back of the room based on my own history. Would you like my body in the back for free? I would be more than willing to help. Absolutely. So I ended up doing that. I got the opportunity to see this gentleman's program or whoever program I was witnessing, right? See how they handled things and dealt with things. But at the end of this particular program, Mark came to the back of the room and said, okay, excuse me, which is the one of you that called my office? I said, well, that was me. And he said, do you have a moment? I'm like, mm-hmm. He goes, I have some time before I have to catch my plane. Let's go grab a cup of coffee. That turned into a connection, and he was kind enough to check in now and again just to see how I was doing. And so one time he called and he goes, Colette, I'm driving through San Diego, and so I was thinking of you. How's it going? I said, well, Mark, I'm just putting together the testimonial page on my website. And he goes, let me give you a testimonial. I said, Mark, You can't give me a testimonial. You've never really seen me speak or do my thing. He's like, Colette, I've had enough conversations with you, and let me just tell you something. When someone like me says, let me give you a testimonial, here's what you say. Thank you, Mark. I accepted it, I put it on my website, and I keep it there to this day to remind myself to get out of my own way sometimes. Because how many of you could relate to that? Oh, wait, not ready yet. It's not good enough. You can't give it to me. So I'm going to encourage you to do this. During the next quarter, identify an individual you already know and commit to building a deeper relationship with them. What else can you do? Show up for a networking opportunity that you're hesitating. And then last of all, look for a person who can make an introduction and ask for their help. Just think if we all did that. And so I'm just going to give you a moment, just a moment at your tables to share and connect with each other, maybe one of your best networking or connection pieces of advice that you've ever put to work. And I hope you realize with the Mark example, it's about giving before you get. Please share. Just a few moments more. Okay, and if I could have your attention slowly back up here, it'd be great. I am certain that you had many great ideas that bubbled up to the top, and I hope that you continue to share these conversations following, because here's the wealth of information right here in the room. Right, so we know the importance of cultivating connections, but as the saying goes, it isn't just what you know, it's who you know and who knows what you know. Who knows what you know? It used to be that if we just kept our heads down and did really wonderful work, that we got noticed and we got rewarded for that. But the game has changed. Everyone is so busy in today's world that sometimes that it's only that hard work that gets noticed that gets rewarded, which is why it's key for all of us to express our success, which is not always easy to do, based on what we talked about earlier with, Sherry's example. All right, however, making one's achievements visible is one of the secondary things besides gaining access to powerful others that Catalyst.org has shown actually moves the needle on your career. Right? And the women who are comfortable in getting better at expressing their success, it shows that they have a higher income, they're happier with their careers, and they've gone further. To me, that's 3 out of 3 reasons to learn how to get more comfortable doing so. But again, I know it is not easy. We are not socialized as women to express our success. I still remember I had a Petri dish out my office window one summer, and the girls, my daughters, were in 5th and 6th grade at the time. And going on in the backyard was a volleyball game, boys against the girls. And I watched my daughter, Casey, smack that ball right over the net. And of course, all the girls on her team, what did they say to her? Yay, Casey, good shot, right? Super supportive. Gabe hits it back. He said, ooh, I'm good. One of Miranda flips it back over on the other side. Everybody's like, yay, Miranda, good job. Back over here, Adam smacks it back, and I quote, I'm better. I was witnessing it right out in my backyard. Right? I mean, in that moment, Gabe and Adam were playing a game of verbal hierarchy, and they're comfortable with it, and they're socialized to do that, and it works, and it's fun for them. But can you imagine if my daughter, after somebody said, way to go, Casey, she went, yeah, that was really good. Or, yeah, I know. Right? Everybody else on that side would have been like, right? You don't do that. And so this is why we're socialized this way, and it gets so hard for us to end up saying good things about ourselves. But we need to change that. So when you watch another woman share her strengths, her successes, her skills, and it's not in some obnoxious way, we've got to say yay. Because otherwise we're sending the message that it's not okay for women to say good things about themselves. And we just continue this pattern. So with that said, well, what do you express your success about? Again, all this information is on that 6-page handout. But listen, it's about a milestone on a project. You streamlined a system. Did you bring a project in earlier, under budget? There are so many things that you're doing every day that without reflecting, at the end of the day, you may miss them, that you're doing that brings more value to your company, your teams, your departments, okay? So yes, what can you do? Well, how do you go about it? I think this is the key piece. I have come up with a few ways to make it work that I think are a little less in someone's face. So let's visit them. I want you to milk the moment. Now, what do I mean by this? Have you ever been given a compliment for something that you achieved or did, and you brush it away? You did a wonderful job on that project. Oh, well, thank you. I had a lot of help. Right? Now, of course, if your team's in the room, you want to honor those in the room. But if you're that leader, you're the person leading the charge, it's okay to take ownership of that. Or even I used to have this issue. People would say to me, oh, I like your jacket. Oh, thanks, Nordstrom Rack, $49.99. I mean, it's okay to say, but you know what I'm saying? We always are so quick to just throw away the compliment. And so instead, I want you to anchor that sucker down. I want people to be impacted and imprinted with what you've done when they compliment you. So instead of oh, you did a wonderful job on that project, thank you. I really appreciated the opportunity to leverage my ability to gather data from a diverse team and align it to our marketing team's goals. Ooh, you see how you're just kind of, right? You're milking it in that moment. I had a woman at that same general council meeting who did this brilliantly. I complimented her on her necklace. And she said, oh, thank you. I do pro bono work, and we won a case, and I treated myself. I was like, ooh, she's good at that, right? I mean, I learned a lot about her in that moment. I learned her extra effort, her success, but it was done so gracefully. And I realized it's hard. And I mean, sometimes we're not fooling people, but we still need to figure out a way to get that word out. Like, for example, in my industry, it was mentioned in my bio, I won that CPAE award, which is a Council of Your Peers award, and it's an honor to win it. It's a big deal. However, I had witnessed over the years a lot of other speakers when they won that award. It just got blasted places, or it was, they sent it out to all their clients, just kind of like, here's something to know about me. And I was really uncomfortable with that, even though I teach this stuff. But I'm thinking, what's a more graceful way that I can go about doing this? I'm not going to fool anybody over the real purpose, but how can I do it? So it was getting close to Thanksgiving time, and so I took the photo that they took of me holding this, thing that looks like the Oscar award winner, and I simply turned it all about towards my customers, like many of you do in marketing, right? Make it about them, not me. So it was, thank you so much for bringing me in to speak over the past few years, because it was all of these building together that led to my receiving this award. So I tried to make it about them. Again, I'm not fooling anyone. They knew what I was doing, but it came across just a little less, all right? So, but that's we gotta milk the moment versus letting it go. And sometimes that means you have to ask your friends for some support, right? I'm not really sure how to put this out there without making it seem like I think I'm all that in a bag of chips. If you were in my situation, what would you do? 9 times out of 10, someone will say, you know what, let me help you with this. Let me promote it for you. All right, but you have to ask, right? Pull a Swift. Do any of you remember the MTV Music Awards years ago? It was 2008, and Taylor Swift had just won for Best Video. And Kanye West jumped the stage, took the mic, and went off about Beyoncé. All right? Awkward. But then the Grammys came shortly thereafter, and she was honored with the award of Best Album of the Year. She was 18 years old. She took the microphone. I couldn't write her words fast enough. They were brilliant. She said, first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone in this room, but specifically my record label. Thank you for letting me write every single one of my own songs on that album. Now, if you know anything about that album, it was full of #1 hits. But even I, who followed her and enjoyed her, did not know she wrote every single one of those songs herself. And I was like, ooh, she's good. And isn't she? Her branding continues to be stellar. Even sometimes when she takes the fall, she gets right back up again. So pull a Swift. How can you just weave something into your conversation? Well, you know what? Based on my 12 years in the produce industry and having attended X number of conferences, something that I've always found is, do you see how you're just kind of slipping it in there? So what ways can you do that as well? Because you're already doing the work. Be a savvy sage. What do I mean by a savvy sage? A savvy sage is somebody who shows up at a meeting prepared with the things that they have accomplished. They may not be on the agenda, but they have a few talking points and they're ready to go, so that should they be asked, what are you working on? How did this go? They're able to articulate that in a very exceptional and professional way. All right? What else? Keep the bottom line on top of your mind. Always when you're talking, it's about adding that value, or how are you creating a better customer experience? So it's the difference if someone says, did you end up meeting with the vendor? Is everything good to go? Yep. Versus, yes. Met with the vendor, secured a 10% discount, which I anticipate will save the company about $7K over the next fiscal year. You've done the same work. But the fact that you are dollarizing it with facts, figures, and numbers makes people pay attention. How's the marketing campaign going? Wonderful. We sent out 2 million flyers. We got back a 10% response rate, which led to 10 new clients and about $2 billion in income. Right? People sit up and pay attention to numbers, which is why we need to be thinking and speaking in that way as well. So a formula, it's not that different than sales. It's like, here's what we did, here's the results, and here's how it benefited the company, the client, the conversation, the bottom line. And always be thinking in those terms. All right, so those are ways to express your success. And I really believe it's your ability to do that that's going to make or break your connections. Risk, resilience, connection. This is some of my favorite stuff to talk about. Because how many of you started out a bit fearless? Few of you, anybody, when you were a little girl, I'm not talking about when she's gotten to the work world, I'm talking about when you were a little girl. Are any of you fearless? Anybody in this room, like Sheryl Sandberg, get called bossy? Put those hands up high. Yes, I was a bossy girl. All right? And so when I got called bossy, what did I start doing? I wish I bossed more. I started to shut it down. Oh, I bossed my family around. But how about the people on the outside? Oh, no, started to play a little bit smaller because it made me feel safe. How about this risk taker? Yeah, and I know we have Karen in the room. There's a tremendous amount of you in this room that are strong risk takers. But I know when I first met Frida years ago at the Produce Marketing Association, I loved hearing her story. I love, talk about the giver to get. They didn't have the mushrooms that she needed then, and she just stood there and packed those boxes until they couldn't get rid of her, right? With Karen along her side. And I mean, risking, and look at what was created as a result. All right, we have to risk. When I was doing the interviews again, I came across this wonderful woman, Lauren Cassidy Wolf. Lauren shared with me, because I said, you got to tell me about an earlier story. I mean, she currently is CEO of 12 Capital Partners. And she said, well, you know, when I first graduated school in mechanical engineering, and then she went and got her MBA from Harvard, so a real underachiever. But she grew up fixing cars with her dad. And she always was she loved NASCAR. That was one of her internships. And she did the ground pit crew. She had to fight her way to get in there. And she really wanted to do that, but when it came for the traveling team, she was told she couldn't go because none of the other men's wives would be comfortable with her on the team. That's when she ended up going back for her MBA. She came out and she started to work for Ford. All right, so she's in her early 20s. She's working for Ford. And there is a graduate program in Ford, and she thought about the fact that it would be so wonderful if the CEO were to come down to the graduate team and kind of have an open dialogue and share some of the stories of Ford to inspire them and to build that connection. Now, this is back in the 20s. Long before, I'm not back in the 20s, back in her 20s, back in the late 70s, early 80s, where culture wasn't a thing that we talked about, right? The CEOs weren't spending necessarily their time going and having these coffee chats. But she thought it was a great idea, so she wrote a handwritten letter, not even an email, a handwritten letter, and sent it to the vice president of human resources, outlining what she thought this great idea was. And I said, well, what made you do that? Straight up to the top VP. She said, well, I really thought it was a good idea. And so I said, okay. Well, what happened is she got called by the global VP of HR, who was told that he wanted to meet with her. She put together a whole PowerPoint presentation about this, showed up prepared. When she walked in, she saw her original letter that had been highlighted. And he said, you know what, the CEO doesn't want to move forward with this, but I had to meet the person who was risking so much by just putting this together and wanting to come up here. There was a series of classes you had to take to be in this program. He literally told her, write your own ticket. The next thing you know, she was overseas driving cars at Land Rovers, learning more. It was because he took a genuine interest in her risk-taking, backed up with knowledge. All right, so we just have to keep risking more. And yet the KPMG 2019 study says that 55% of women believe that taking risks progresses their career more fully. All right, how many of you in this room believe taking risks? All right, but here's where it gets tricky. If you can see this, then they said to women, well, what contributed to your success? Hard work. I'm detail-oriented. Okay, only 8% said being a risk taker. So what am I saying? We're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. Because if we're not willing to take those risks and we're just sticking with our tasks trying to get ahead, we're missing out. We are missing out. So again, no surprise, women feel more confident taking risks when it benefits the company versus themselves. Just like the research and negotiation and asking for salary increases. If it's on behalf of someone else, they'll go to bat. On behalf of themselves, a little less likely. So having said all that, what stops us from taking risks? We all have our internal stuff going on. I'll share with you one of mine. These were my two when they were little. Here they are in today's world. Casey's on the left. She graduated in industrial engineering, worked for Deloitte for 3 years as a consultant, decided she had had it with being a road warrior, and is now at Ross Business School in Ann Arbor getting her MBA. Chandler, her older sister, who just turned 27, and by the way, I named that kid before the show Friends went on the air. But it obviously doesn't bother me because I feel no need to bring it up. Chan is in her 5th year teaching 2nd grade with a special education focus, just finished her master's in applied behavioral analysis because she loves working with children and thrives working with children on the spectrum. All right, we all come out with a blueprint. Truth? Got to play to our strengths. But anyway, now that the girls are old, I love when they come home for the holidays. I treasure it. But I still remember when they were young. And I used to have a passion to put together the most perfect Christmas tree. Anybody else in the room? Because that's how we celebrate in our house. Anybody else, a soul sister out there, soul brother? That's how it has to be? Yeah. Okay, I had a musical tree because I grew up playing the piano. Every ornament was perfect. It was perfectly placed. Then you have these two. They start going to preschool, kindergarten. What do they bring home around the holidays? What kind of ornaments? That's right. Those homemade macaroni pieces of crap. With their picture somewhere in the center. And then where do they want to hang those? Yeah, front and center, whatever height they happen to be that year. All right, so that's the backstory. Chandler's in 1st grade. I said, honey, we're going to decorate the Christmas tree tonight. And let me just say, as a mother, I do believe that they belong on the tree. The back of the tree. Okay, so now that we've got that established, I said, honey, we're going to decorate the Christmas tree tonight. And she said, no, Mommy, I don't want to this year. I said, wow, 1st grade? I'm thinking to myself, well, wow. Any particular reason why? Now, do any of you have a truth teller in your life? Somebody who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear? Somebody who holds up the mirror to you and helps you realize what a whack job you really are? Okay, Well, even back then, Chandler was and still is my truth teller. And she said, yes, Mommy, because after Casey and I go to bed, you're just going to rearrange it all. I wanted to say, you're right, nighty-night. But I didn't. I didn't just listen that time. I heard her. And I took a breath and I said, wow. I said, really, up until that moment, I was lacking awareness of how my behavior was impacting her and her sister in that circumstance. And so I thought, wow. It wasn't until she brought that to my attention that she helped me realize that I am a perfectionistic control freak that can suck the fun out of anything. All right? So I turned to her and I said, okay, you know what? I'll tell you what. You and Casey can decorate that Christmas tree any way you want, and I promise you I will not touch a thing. And so they perked back up, and they did. Now, I'm aware enough to know this is a first world problem, but I will tell you, it was the hardest Christmas of my life. No, really. I'm not just going for a laugh here. It was hard. I had a party. I couldn't relax because my eye the entire time is like, noticing my dysfunctional tree. And then I thought, oh, I know, I'll just make up a cute story about it, let myself off the hook. And I thought, don't you dare. Because if you do, you're making an excuse for it. You're not accepting it. Right? If you make up like an excuse for it, it's like saying, anyway, I don't even need to go there. That holiday, we did not have a perfect tree. But we had something else. Connection. That kid taught me it's not about perfection, it's about connection. And yet, how many people do I continue to meet that won't go for an opportunity because they don't feel perfect enough yet? Or it's not perfect enough yet. Perfection is paralyzing, and it stops us from taking risks and owning our worth. I met a woman in a bathroom following a presentation in a male-dominated industry. It was the electrical industry. And she shared with me that she had just returned from Singapore, where her company brought together 200 of their best clients, the sales team, of which Lisa was one, and a few executives. And at the final banquet night, she hears her name being announced over the loudspeaker as the North American Sales Excellence Award winner. And she turns to everybody at her table. She's like, I don't know why I won. Her supervisor's sitting right next to her, who nominated her for the award. She said, what should I do? He goes, get up there. So she said, right before this picture was taken, she literally turned to the global president and the United States, the president of their company, North American president, and said, I don't know why I'm winning this award. I didn't do anything special. She said, it wasn't until I was listening to your presentation that I realized I had achieved a lot that year. It's just that I had set some goals with my supervisor, and I came close, but I hadn't achieved them all, even though it was a really tough year. I hadn't done it perfectly. Right, we've got to stop worrying about it being perfect and know that at 80% launch, you've all heard the research about how men are very comfortable going after a position when they're about 60% on board with the skills that they need. And yet too many of us still hold back until it's perfect. Stop wasting that time. Sometimes we have to risk speaking up, right? Risk speaking up when it feels uncomfortable. I was coaching a woman in the engineering industry, and she was saying that she's responsible for her team and that they've been hiring more women engineers, and now the men are starting to give her some pushback about it. And she's like, I'm going to go to this next meeting, and they're going to say, oh, are we hiring more women? And she said, I'm at a loss for the words. What should I say, Colette? And I said, well, I always think it's best to just stick with the facts of the matter. So why not just simply say, you know what? Yes, we actually are hiring 2 more female engineers. And given that our engineering team is still 86% male, I hope everyone will make them feel warm and welcome. Bam. Right? Sometimes we over talk a situation. versus just sticking with the facts and saying what needs to be said, with clarity, sincerity, and respect, of course. But we have to get better at speaking our truth, whatever that is. Now, keep in mind there's a big difference between speaking your truth and speaking your mind, right? When you speak your truth, it's about getting it right. When you speak your mind, it's about being right. But we've got to sometimes just let our defenses down and be in that moment better and say what needs to be said rather than hesitate. We have to if you're going to lead people, we're never helping anyone when we think one thing and we say and do another. And yet, how many of you have all been in a meeting where at the end of the meeting you're like, woohoo, it's all great, right? Thank you so much. And yet you know inside that what needed to get said wasn't said because someone was unwilling to be honest. That's being out of alignment, and that creates stress, internal stress and dysfunction at a company. So yeah, you got to figure out how to say it so that it works better, but we have to risk having more of these conversations. And again, you may look at me up here and think that I have it together. Okay, I'm working at this every single day, all of this stuff. I started my journey long ago. I still remember the very first time brown eyes. That's what I called him because he had these chocolate brown eyes. He and I were married. We had our very first fight. He asked me what was wrong, and like Pavlov's dog, what did I say? Nothing. Right, and then continued to give him the cold shoulder. Right? I marched down the hallway. I slammed the door just to get that nonverbal communication in. And I jump on the bed and I wait. 5 minutes goes by. I hear the game. 10 minutes goes by. I smell popcorn. I'm back there getting angrier and angrier and angrier because I am thinking to myself, how dare he be out there enjoying himself when I specifically told him nothing was wrong. So I marched myself back out there and I said, excuse me, but you and I need to have a conversation because I plan to be married to you for a very long time. And we were. 18 years. And at the time, I was thinking 15. And I said, look, when I say nothing's wrong, something's wrong. You're supposed to chase me down the hall until you get it out of me. And he looked up at me and he said, no. Colette, if something is wrong, you need to bring it to me so we can address it, so we can find a solution for it. I got to tell you, that is some of the best advice Brown Eyes ever gave me. And it has certainly helped with Blue Eyes the last decade. And we laugh, but you know what else it's helped with? It's helped with my business. Because we have to have those honest, real, critical conversations if we're really going to go to the next level. We got to grow to the next level, right? And if you feel uncomfortable having them, that's normal. Comfort and growth are incompatible. And so why stay on this side stressing about something when you can risk being real and build that resilience that comes from having taken that step, right? So if it's within your control, these situations I'm talking about, take control. Don't just complain about it, do something about it. Because action is the way to reduce stress and anxiety and worry. Anytime we move towards something that we're afraid of, we reduce our anxiety. You move away from it, it grows. So with that said, if it's out of your control, though, you've done all you can in this situation to make it different, guess what your solution is? Let it go, let it go. That's all the words I know. But seriously, we got to get better just letting things go that are out of our control. Right? Because we can't take everything on and still be growing to the next level. So what do you need to do to let it grow? Well, I'm all about resetting your mindset in those moments. Shifting your perspective. Reframing a situation so that you can handle it, deal with it, and move forward. How many of you have ever been on an airplane? Ha ha, right? Everybody in the room. If you've been on an airplane, you know it's glamorous. Right? You also know in that moment that sometimes you're going to hear the captain come on and tell you that you're not going anywhere because there's something going on in the cockpit. What happens to everybody's stress level at that moment? Boom! Is it in or out of your control? Out. So sure, in that moment, you may fire up your app, figure out other options, etc., but after that, it's out of your control. This particular pilot, he came back on. He said something I've never heard before or since. He said, I want you to know that I have incredible empathy for everybody in the chairs right now because you have places to go. You have loved ones to get to. You maybe have a wedding or a business meeting that you've been waiting a long time. You've got vacations, and this is a challenge. He goes, I also was looking forward to getting home tonight because I've been on the road a few nights, and I was looking forward to kissing my own kids goodnight. But I made a promise to those kids when they were little that I would never put a plane up in the air that wasn't guaranteed to get it where it was going, to make it safe to bring everybody home to their loved ones. And I make that same commitment to you. Now, what happened to our stress levels in that moment? They went down. He was empathetic. I mean, I could go on and all the leadership traits about that, but the bottom line is he reframed the situation for us. He reset our mindsets, and he helped us realize it was better to be delayed than dead. How do you reset your mindset? Sometimes a physical anchor can help. Because when you have a pattern in your mind that's you're worrying about something, taking that risk or whatever it is, or whatever's coming up in your life, if you can shift it through physical activity, it's a pattern reset. All right, so when I went online, I learned that Let It Go. I watched the Disney on YouTube. This is Let It Go in sign language. Putting your two okays together, which I realize is not okay in some countries, but we're here today, okay? And then you go, woo, let it go, like that. Try it with me. Put your two hands together at the count of 3. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, let it go as loud as you can. 1, 2, 3, let it go. Let's do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, let it go. All right, this is a great tool. You can use it in a meeting under the table. But it's a pattern interrupt. And I know this sounds crazy, but it works. All this stuff works. I'm on the bus trying to go to the airport. I realize I forgot one of my straps that holds 3 pieces of luggage together. I'm like, oh, you dummy. I can't believe. I'm like, this man across from me looks at me. I said, oh, it means let it go in sign language. Right? Okay. So whatever works for you, we've got to let it go in that moment. What else can we do? Get up and move. Changing our state helps us deal with things. Go to the bathroom. Wash your hands. Not only will it help with the coronavirus, but it will help you if you are present in the moment. Stay present. Feel the soap and water rushing over your hands versus your thinking. This is brain training, is really what it is. You can even have a mantra, I go with the flow. I go with the flow. Make up your own song, right? I go with the flow, I go with the flow. If Margie goes missing, no one will know. All right, whatever it is, but whatever helps should come back to you. Be present, right? How else can you reset your mindset? Breathe, right? Sometimes I think we get all freaked out, but if we will just stop and take a breath. Slow, deep breathing where your belly goes out, not your chest going up. You know, if it's good enough for the SEALs, I spoke to the SEALs, they do box breathing. 4 breaths in, hold for 4 breaths, 4 breaths out, rest for 4 breaths. I've been practicing breathing for a long time, and if you can tell, I have a tendency to be a little type A, and now when there's a barista moving a little bit slower than I would prefer, I just breathe. I look at it as a gift. Now when I'm coming and there's all of a sudden the red, it's turning from yellow to red, and I want to go, right? Instead of picking up my phone, I look at it as a gift to breathe. Right? And I always have my mantras. That's what keeps me sane. I say to myself, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Because have you ever noticed it's impossible to feel grateful and stressed at the same time? That's a real fast reset, your mindset. And then we have to take breaks. People are like, I don't have time to take a break. All right, well then when do you have time to get sick? Because that's the direction you're heading. And I am tired of getting emails from my friends who say something like this, Colette, I just had the best week of my life. I got sick. And I gave myself permission to stay in bed and catch up on my DVR TV. I let everything else go. And I'm like, man, if we're waiting until our bodies stop before we take a break, that's why breaks stop us from having breakdowns. Breaks create breakthroughs. Have you ever noticed that when you walk away from a challenge, the solution finds you? It's not when you're sitting there obsessing over it. The guy who created Instagram created it while walking on a beach, not while sitting at his desk saying, I need to come up with $1 million app. So sometimes we need to give ourselves those breaks, no matter how much is waiting for us to get done. Some people go, but that makes me feel selfish. I'll tell you, I changed the way I say that word. I now say it's selfish, because the ISH stands for I stay happy. I stay healthy. And the irony is, the more selfish I become, the better my relationships, the stronger my business has grown, and the healthier I am. So we've got to shift how we see that and take a break. And I want you to know, I get how hard it is, which is why I'm going to close with this story. I'm home one day on my computer, cranking out, because when I'm home, there's always, this is the fun part of my job. Like when I'm home, not that it's not fun, but you know what I mean? That's like when all the work's getting done. My daughter, Casey, happened to be home. She comes in and she's like, come on, Mom, it's Sunday. Do you know that research now shows that Sunday at 3:43 p.m., people start to stress out? That's the exact time through research, because like, oh, Monday's coming, right? So I'm like cranking out some stuff, and she goes, Mom, it's going to be sunset soon. Let's go walk the beach. I'm like, Casey, I've got so much to do. You don't understand. I have to get on a plane. She goes, Mom, breaks now are better than breakdowns later. I'm like, God, you had to listen to that one, huh? So she goes, let's get Blue Eyes to come along. He always likes to photograph a beautiful sunset. I'm like, Casey, you don't have, she's like, Mom. So I'm like, you know what? I need to go, right? Take the break. We're walking along the beach, and it's about sunset time, and Casey said, Mom, let's jump and have Blue Eyes take the snapshot of us. I'm like, Casey, I'm not a jumper, all right? Like, I'm not like that. That's just not who I am. I'm not a selfie queen. I have to force myself to do social media, given my business. I'm like, I don't need to do that. And she's like, I go, Casey, who was the woman that did not have a photographer at her wedding? Okay, like, please, I don't want this. And she's like, Mom, be childlike. Like, she starts pulling out all the stuff I've told her all these years. Take a risk. Nobody's watching. Who cares who's judging you, right? Have the confidence to do whatever you want to do. I'm like, oh, geez, just shut this child up. And so I jumped. And now I keep that picture on my phone and next to my desk to remind me to take a break. Because in reality, connection begins within. And so I hope through the rest of your time together in Tampa and all the other places where you show up together, that you continue to build on the power of connection. And look around this room, it's loaded with brain candy. Please ask anyone in here for what you need to succeed, and I guarantee you they'll find a way to help you or find someone who can. That's the power of connection. Thank you again. I'm Colette Carlson. Here she comes. Oh, it's all good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Colette. And thanks, everybody, for coming to Southern Roots. Just a few things. I'd like to thank the sponsors again this year, if we can give them a round of applause. They made this happen for us. We also would like your feedback and your input. If you're going to get a survey at the end of it, if you could fill it out. Anytime you have ideas, please bring them to the council or the committee. If I can get my committee to stand up. We'll be all around. Terry, Nicole, Julie, Rose, Kim, and of course, Kelly. Thanks again, everybody. Enjoy Southern Exposure.